Hi, how are we doing today? I'm doing great because I'm here with my January wrap up. January was a weird month for me. I don't know. I feel like nothing went as I planned, but I still read 12 books this month, so I still see that as a success. And that amounted to 3,835 pages read, which is an average of 123.70 pages per day and an average of 319.58 pages per book. I did one reread and I had 0 DNFs, so that's fun. Then for format, I read 3 books I physically own, 2 ebooks, 4 galleys from NetGalley, and 3 library books. Then for star rating, we have 1 star, 3 2 stars, 2 3 stars, 5 4 stars, and 1 5 star, which is an average rating of 3.16, which is way lower than I wanted to be. Then for age range, all 12 books that I read were adult books. And then for genre, we have 5 contemporaries, 1 nonfiction, 2 fantasies, 3 mystery thrillers, and 1 historical. So let's actually delve into the 12 books that I read this month, starting off with Good Spirits by Vicky Borison, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. Yes, I started out January with a Christmas book, but I really love First Time Caller by Vicky Borison, which I read last year. It's one of my favorites of the year. So when everyone this Christmas season was hyping up this new release, I was like, okay, fine, I'll check it out. And I really enjoyed it. It's not like my favorite, I'm not obsessed with it the same way I was with First Time Caller, but I did thought it was a really fun, cute read, a very much Christmas vibe, but also like had more like emotional depth to it, which did make me figure out that that's why I typically don't like Christmas rom-coms. I feel like they lack the depth that I need from a romance, and I feel like this delivered on that, definitely. Then I read A Taste for Poison, 11 Deadly Molecules, and the Killers Who Used Them by Neil Bradbury, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This is a non-fiction book. In 2026, I'm really hoping to read more non-fiction, so I had to start off the year right. And this is exactly what it says on the tin. It's about 11 different poisons and connecting it to different true crime cases to help explain how the poison works, and I thought it was really interesting. I feel like the true crime aspect was an interesting hook into the whole thing, but all of the chemistry stuff was also really interesting and explained in a way that I, as someone who's horrible at chemistry, still understood. I just think this book got a little bit repetitive at times. Then next I read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Weiss, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. If you know me, you know I'm obsessed with the AMC TV show that adapted this book, so of course now that we're in between seasons, I had to read the book to kind of like fulfill the hunger in my heart for the show. And honestly, I really liked it. I liked it much more than I was expecting. I know just from other people that this is like a very slow, dense read, so it doesn't really match with everyone, but I quite liked it. I really thought, even though it was slow, it was very intriguing, very atmospheric. I felt sucked in right from the first page. I think Louis' narrative is very interesting. I feel like he has an interesting, because this is obviously just Louis just like monologuing basically, but I feel like the way he talks, like he tells the story, is very interesting. It kept me reading, kept me interested despite not a whole lot happening. I think this lacked a little bit of depth when it comes to like character dynamics and character relationships. I feel like Louis very often just like jumps from one moment to the next and kind of like doesn't really show the development in between that, which I prefer that the show does. So that also make me dock a star. Then next I read The Storm by Rachel Hawkins, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to, and as a galley I got from NetGalley. This is a mystery thriller from Rachel Hawkins, and I feel like her mystery thrillers just always end up the same for me. They always wind up 3 stars, where I really enjoy them. While I'm reading them, they're very quick reads that are very easy to get through, are very fun reads, but ultimately like aren't really that memorable, and this definitely was also the case. I had a really fun time reading this. I think the setting of this is really strong. I do think that this book is insanely predictable. Like, I guessed the big reveal within the first chapter, which is very disappointing, but overall I thought the characters were fun. I had a decent enough time, but I'm already starting to forget a whole lot about it. Then I read Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars to, and something about the way this was written just didn't really work for me, and I feel like it's more so within the character's narrative, because there's also like a podcast element to this book, and those sections I really liked. I was really sucked into. I thought they were intriguing, and there were some interesting reveals and twists done in that, but when it came to like the main narrative within our main character's head, kind of, which is like typical, you know, how a book is written, that I just didn't really connect with, and I can't really put my finger on why. I never really got into it. I never really felt sucked into it. I feel like not a whole lot happened in those sections, and then ultimately like the reveal just felt very cliche and a bit of a letdown. The next I read The Last Session by Julia Bartz, which I gave 1 out of 5 stars to, and was a galley I got from NetGalley. And yikes, I want to say I liked this, but I didn't at all. I really loved The Writing Retreat by this author, which I know is a very divisive book, but I really enjoyed it, so I was very hopeful for this book. And honestly, if it wasn't for the wedding retreat, I probably would have DNF'd this because that's just how bad it was. But something within me just was like, you love this other book, maybe this was gonna get better, but it never did. In fact, I think it got worse. I thought it was very boring. It went on and on about things that in the end just did not matter. And you know, what I've noticed with Julia Bartz is like in the latter half her books get a bit bonkers, but this one just was a little bit too bonkers. I didn't have a fun time. I felt like I had those brain cells while reading it. It didn't make sense, and I don't know, I really didn't have a good time with this. And then next I read The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to, and as a guy I got from NetGalley. I picked this up after the last session because I really wanted something that I knew I was gonna like, and literally everyone I've ever seen that has read this loves it. But as you can tell by my star rating that I just gave you, I didn't. And it's such a disappointment, especially because I feel like this book has a lot of potential. There were a lot of elements to it that I liked. I thought the world at first was very hard to like wrap my head around, but it's very interesting. I feel like the mystery was intriguing enough. I quite liked the characters, but overall I feel like everything just was undercooked. The mystery got very repetitive and it was very drawn out in a way that I feel like it could have been condensed very much. Also, the world, like I said, was very confusing as much as it was interesting. I still don't feel like I have a full grasp on everything we learned in this book. And then the characters, as much as I liked them, they were very one-dimensional. And everything just, I feel like needed that tad bit more to really have a book that would work for me. But right now it didn't, and it just feels so disappointing when you can see all the potential there. Then next I read Picture Perfect by Tessa Bailey, which is my 5-star of the month. I love this book so much, which was totally unexpected because it's the 4th book in the Big Shot series, which is a series of standalone contemporary sports romances by Tessa Bailey. And I haven't really been the biggest fan of this series, but something about it just keeps calling me back every time a new book comes out, because I do think the books set up the next couple really well. I'm so glad I stuck around until this part, because this book was everything I personally want from a romance and more. It just contains all the trope I love, and it does it brilliantly and just shows me why I love those tropes, because this executed them really well. I thought the romance was really well written, very well developed. I feel like with Tessa Bailey, an often complaint I have is that it's very steamy, very sexy, but there isn't like a lot of emotional depth, and I feel like this book balances the two really well. I really like the 2 main characters. I love their personal development. I like the cast of side characters, the little hijinks everyone get up to. I just had a blast reading this. Then we have The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore, which I give 2 to 5 stars to, and is a galley got from NetGalley. This is another series that never fully works for me, and I don't know why I'm still here. Besides the fact that I do think they are really fun palette cleanser reads, I feel like this one, again, I wasn't really the biggest fan of. I feel like for the most part it was fine. I had an equal amount of dislikes as likes, so I felt like I felt very meh about it. I feel like the main characters were a little bit annoying, but ultimately that I feel like they did have enough growth throughout the book for it to not bother me that much. I feel like the romance was a bit more underdeveloped than I would personally like. This is a single dad romance, and I personally thought the child felt more like an accessory than an actual character. But then on the flip side, I loved the townspeople and kind of like the storylines around that. It was very cozy, very fun. So it's very much flip-flopping between like likes and dislikes, and therefore I for the most part landed on a 3-star, but as you can tell it's a 2. And the reason I ended up knocking a star down is because the third conflict just pissed me off so much. Like, it was so frustrating, and it's a trope that I feel like not a lot of people like, and it definitely wasn't well executed, if you catch my drift. Then next I read Half Age by Jennette McCurdy, which I gave 4 to 5 stars to. This came out this month, and of course I immediately had to read it, but I really liked this. I saw so many mixed reviews for this book, kind of at like the lead up to the release from people with early copies, that I really liked it. I thought it was really well written, and I feel like that's the main thing that I liked about this, is the writing and kind of like the subtleties within the writing. Like the way Jennette McCurdy did such a great job at telling a story through a character's perspective and making things obvious to you as the reader that the main character is not picking up on at all is so well done. And I feel like that's a skill that I feel like not a lot of people have, and I really liked how that was executed in this book. I thought it was a very interesting story with interesting characters that aren't the most likable. I feel like that's gonna be a gripe for this book for a lot of people, is that Waldo is not the most likable person, but still I found myself really invested in her character and like rooting for her. The only thing that I kind of wanted from this book is that it constantly felt like it was building towards something, and it just never got there for me, and it kind of just stayed very much on like the same line, which again I feel like that's going to be a big issue for some people, considering that it's very much character focused and like there isn't much of a story at all. But I didn't mind it that much. It's just that it constantly had the feeling of building towards something and it never went there. Then next I read My December Darling by Lauren Asher, which I give 2 out of 5 stars to. Yes, I keep reading Christmas books in January. Fuck off. But it is a romance novella, and I just think romance novellas just aren't for me, and I feel like this is a perfect example of that, because I technically have no complaints for this book. I thought it was perfectly fine. It's very cute. It's not as Christmassy as I wanted to, but I liked the 2 main characters. I thought their romance was cute. They had great banter, but I just feel like a novella, especially for a romance, just doesn't really allow for the depth that I want in it, and therefore it just kind of feels a bit meh to me overall. And then finally for this month we have An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn, which I give 5 stars to, and this was a reread. I decided to reread this after watching part 1 of season 4 for Bridgerton, which is Benedict's story, which is this book, and I originally gave it 5 stars, and I was very sad to have Dr. Star, because even though I still really liked it and I still really enjoy it, I feel like Sophie is like one of my favorite female characters in a series. I love her so much. This book was very funny. The romance had very cute moments. It just wasn't as charming as I wanted it, as I remembered it being, and what I want from like a book like this. And also Benedict annoyed me more in the book than I remember at first, and he's like very selfish, and he just pissed me off at times a bit more than I remember doing first time around. Anyway, that is everything that I have for you today. Let me know in the comments what you thought of any of these books, if you've read them, as well as some of your favorite books you read in January, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye.